Hey, what's up, Good Life? Thanks for joining me for today's 128 moment. We're in a series right now entitled Less is More, beginning this new year by confronting the things that we need to drop off in order to be able to focus on Jesus. And this past Sunday, we talked about getting rid of the baggage that hinders us, holds us back from living all out for Christ. And today, I want us to look at another one of those areas of our lives, another type of baggage that could use that less is more treatment. Look at Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1, where it says, "Therefore, since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin that clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that's set before us, looking to Jesus, the founder and perfecter of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and is seated at the right hand of the throne of God." You see, Hebrews chapter 12, it comes right after Hebrews 11. You know, it's funny how that works. And in Hebrews chapter 11, the writer of Hebrews outlines, he runs through a list of the people from God's big story who lived by faith, big faith. People like Abraham and Rahab and Moses and David, these great heroes of the faith who are all remembered in the great hall of faith in Hebrews chapter 11. Now, this great cloud of witnesses that the writer talks about, they embraced a less is more mindset. And because of that, God did great things through them. But we can't miss something crucial about what this passage is saying. These were all heroes of the faith who wanted more of God, but at least one of the reasons that God was able to use them is that they lived with less baggage. You see, many, if not most of the people who are listed in this great cloud of witnesses, they had plenty of baggage that they could have been carrying. Plenty of moments in their lives that I'm sure they regretted. Moments they would have given anything to go back and do over. People like Abraham, who was the father of God's chosen nation, but he was once a coward who hid behind his wife, pretending to be her brother in moments when they were in danger. And he did it not once, he did it more than once. Or you have Rahab, who helped God's people conquer the promised land by protecting the Israelite spies as they went in to the city of Jericho to scope it out. But in her past, before that moment, she was a prostitute. That could be baggage. You got Moses, who led God's people out of slavery in Egypt, but there was a time in his life where he was a murderer, who killed an Egyptian guard who had mistreated God's people. And then you got David, the great poet, warrior, king of Israel, but he was a liar and an adulterer and a murderer in what he did to Bathsheba and her husband Uriah. When these ordinary people experienced these epic failures, they had every reason to believe that their baggage would disqualify them from God's love and from God's work. It would have been easy for them to convince themselves that God was done with them, that they were way too far gone to do anything more for God. And yet, their lives were not defined by their failures. Their lives were defined by God's grace. Now, how? How can we, like those great but flawed Bible heroes of old, how can we live out our purpose? Well, the only way for us to do that is for us to keep the past sins from shaping our future mission. The only way for us to keep that from happening is for us to cast sin aside. Every person doesn't seem to struggle with every sin, but for every person, there are a few sins that cling really closely. Those sins that seem to easily entangle us time after time. God's command to us so that we can fulfill God's call on us is to cast sin aside. And this act of less is more. This comes from focusing on more of Jesus. The best way for us to cast aside sin is for us to fix our eyes on Christ. And while this sounds simple enough, I think we make it harder than it has to be. We have this tendency to want to clean ourselves up before anyone sees us. If your house is not always clean, you're in good company. You hate the thought of the dreaded pop-in, someone you know, seeing how chaotic your life can sometimes be. And this tendency, it spills into our spiritual lives as well. We tend to want to fix ourselves before we focus on Jesus. But we got it all backwards. The only way to fix what's broken in us is to fix our eyes on Jesus first. He's already done everything that needs to be done to finish and perfect our faith. All we've got to do is fix our eyes on Him and surrender to God's work in our lives. So, Good Life, as we step into 2021, my prayer is that we will ask the Lord to search our hearts. We'll ask Him to point out our sins, those sins that so easily and repeatedly trip us up, and that He will give us the desire and the power to cast them aside. Hope that encourages you today as much as it does me. Don't forget, we've got our Next Steps class this Sunday after the 11 o'clock service. Also after the 11 o'clock service, we've got Good Life students heading to bowl at Bolero. They're leaving after the 11 o'clock service. The price for that is $15. And we'll have our live services at 9:30 and 11. And our online service will go live at 11. Now, at least that's what we're shooting for. We've hit some hurdles. We've hit some snags each week, but we've sorted those out. It's been different ones each time, and we think we're ready to pull off 11 o'clock. So thank you for your patience. I love you guys. We'll see you soon. And let's go be a people who will love enough.